Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
First, a word from this month's sponsor, Ethico.
If you're a compliance officer, middle managers are crucial in getting your programs from you to your frontline employees. But how do we activate those managers and get them on our side? Ethico's new Middle Manager Toolkit equips you with the skills needed to empower your managers, to promote a culture where ethical behavior thrives and employees feel empowered to speak up. Learn how to turn frontline managers into ethical leaders with our new white paper, Empowering Middle Managers as Ethics Champions. And did I mention you can get the whole toolkit for free? Head to ethico.com to download the full toolkit today.
Also, if you are looking for something new and different for the upcoming Compliance Week celebration in November, check out The Compliance Kids. It's my 3-book children's series on compliance and compliance professionals for children. But they make great gifts and great training tools for your employees. You can check it out on Amazon.com. We've linked to it in the show notes. The Daily Compliance News for October 7, 2024, the Oops edition. And we begin with that story as Brazil's top court says X paid its pending fines to the wrong bank. Oops. Brazil's Supreme Court said that lawyers representing the social media platform X did not pay fines to the proper bank, postponing its decision on whether to allow the tech firm to resume services in Brazil. All I can say is, wow. Payment terms generally are pretty straightforward. So it's going to be interesting to see if this is a real conundrum. Next up from CNN, the billionaire who brought Formula One to Singapore has been charged in a landmark corruption probe. A Singapore court charged Ong Beng Sing with obstructing justice and abetting offenses by a disgraced and now convicted ex-transportation minister. He is the rights holder to the Singapore Grand Prix Formula One and is accused of giving high-value gifts to ex-minister S. Iswaran, who became the first former cabinet minister to be jailed in Singapore for corruption. So, sounds like they're getting the bribe payer this time around. Next up from Bloomberg, prosecutors will decide by the end of the year on whether or not to charge former Ing Group NV chief executive Ralph Hammers after the Dutch bank agreed to settle for failing to follow rules against money laundering. The probe, which began in 2020, led to Ing agreeing to a €775 million settlement in 2018. And our final story comes to us from the Financial Times. It involves the great state of Texas and the stock exchange that Texas is setting up. It says it will have tougher listings than the standards in New York, and many of the companies that make the New York Stock Exchange will not be able to list on Texas. Could be very stringent to exclude more than a third of the companies, both on NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange. Well, that doesn't sound like a very reasonable or rational business argument, unless you want to try to pretend that you're exclusive, which, of course, it's the great state of Texas. So who knows? Anyway, that's the Financial Times reporting on this, and it's going to be interesting to see what other rules that the Texas Stock Exchange comes up with and whether they will treat investors fairly as opposed to only companies. Well, remember, it's Texas. As I mentioned at the start of this podcast, the sponsor for the entire Compliance Podcast Network is Ethico. Well, Ethico has a great new offering this month for you, a toolkit for middle managers. This is something that you, as the compliance professional, can use to move your compliance program forward by giving middle managers the skills necessary to answer a call for speak up or when someone comes in their office and raises a concern. I can't think of a tool that will be more valuable for you in the current era of enforcement. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.